My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I was married for 27 years. I thought I knew what loyalty meant. I thought I knew who I was. Then, he said I was too comfortable. This is what happened next. I still remember the way David held his coffee that morning, like it was a normal Tuesday, like he didn't spend the night texting someone else, like he hadn't just rehearsed the words he was about to throw into my chest like darts. He didn't even look up when he said it. I'm leaving, Amanda. I've met someone else. There was no pause, no shame, just those 7 words, like a door slamming shut on 27 years of my life. I said nothing. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Not yet. I looked at his hand, his left hand. And that's when I saw it. A ring, not his wedding ring, a new one, sleek, modern. Someone else had picked that out. Someone else had put it there. And still I didn't speak. My body understood what was happening before my mind could form the shape of it. David sipped his coffee. Cream, no sugar. Always the same. I remembered that I used to stir it for him, even when I was angry, even when I felt him slipping away. I was still stirring his coffee. He finally looked at me, calm, maybe even relieved. Amanda, this isn't about you. It's about what we became. I can't keep living in something that feels over. Over. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him bleed the way I was bleeding in silence, but all I did was stare, not at him, but past him, like I could see the ghost of the life he just ended. Our son's birthday, that trip to Savannah, my mother's funeral, and the way he held me too tightly, too long, like he was afraid I'd disappear. Ironic now. I whispered, "How long?" David didn't blink. Almost a year, but if I'm honest, it's been longer than that. There it was, the truth, raw and sharp. He hadn't just left me this morning. He'd been leaving me for years. Quietly, carefully, preparing the exit while I folded his socks and reminded him to book dentist appointments. And then he stood up, just like that, took the last sip of his coffee, walked to the door, no suitcase, no drama, just distance. Amanda, I'll have the papers sent to your lawyer. I don't want this to be ugly. Ugly? It already was. But he didn't see it. He never saw me. He closed the door like he was leaving a hotel room. I stood there in my robe, with trembling fingers, dry mouth, no breath in my lungs, and realized something that would burn in me for months. David didn't break my heart that morning. He erased me, like I was a page in his story he got tired of reading. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the same bed David and I had shared for nearly 3 decades, and I couldn't remember how to breathe. 27 years. Gone. Dismantled. Not in a fight. Not in a betrayal I caught red-handed. Not in some dramatic scene from a movie, but in 4 quiet sentences over coffee. I'm leaving, Amanda. I've met someone else. It's not you, it's what we became. That's all it took. 4 sentences, and suddenly everything we'd built didn't mean anything anymore. Not to him. I looked around the room and saw it differently now. The dent in the mattress on his side, the one I used to press my back against when I couldn't sleep, the photo on the nightstand from our 20th anniversary in Napa. My favourite dress in the closet, the one he said made me look like the woman he first fell in love with. I closed my eyes and the memories came like a wave I couldn't stop. The night he proposed in the parking lot of that cheap Italian place, hands shaking because the ring box got stuck in his coat pocket. The day we signed the mortgage and he said, "This is ours, Amanda. This is forever." The moment our son Thomas was born and David cried harder than I did. The way his mother used to touch my cheek like I was the daughter she never had. All of it. Every moment. Every breath. Flattened under the weight of 4 damn sentences. And what made it worse, what made me want to scream until my voice cracked, was that I didn't even see it coming. Not really. Sure, there were signs, fewer smiles, more time at work, distance in bed. But I thought, I thought we were just tired. I thought that's what happens when life piles on. I thought he'd come back to me eventually, like he always did. He didn't. Instead, he rewrote our history, cast me as the role he outgrew. I curled up on the bed, still warm from his body, and I stared at the ceiling until the tears stopped. They always stop eventually. That's the thing no one tells you. Your heart can break and break and break, and still, somehow, it keeps beating. David walked away like 27 years was a chapter he could close with a signature. But for me, it was a demolition. And I was still standing in the rubble, choking on the dust, with nothing but the echo of his voice and 4 sentences that shattered everything I thought was real. Her name was Rebecca. She was 38, maybe 39, though she dressed like someone trying hard to stay 35. Soft voice, big eyes, nervous laugh that always landed just a beat too loud. She was familiar. In a way I didn't question then, and can't unfeel now. Rebecca came into our home more times than I can count. She wasn't just the mistress. She was the woman I made tea for. The woman who complimented our hardwood floors, asked for my potato salad recipe, and once said, "I swear to God, you and David are couple goals." She said that. While sleeping with my husband, I hosted her. I smiled across dinner tables while she smiled back, knowing things I didn't. I ironed her dress once when she came by straight from work and said it was wrinkled and embarrassing. She looked at me like I was some quaint older sister. I said, "Don't worry, I've got you." I had no idea what I was holding. I remember the night it hit me, long after David left. I was doing dishes and a memory floated in, Rebecca sitting at our kitchen counter laughing too hard at something David said. I can still hear it, that laugh. The way his eyes flicked to her, the way she touched his arm when she thanked me for dinner. That night, she brought wine, a bold red, David's favourite, not mine. Mine gave me migraines, but I drank it anyway just to be polite. They both seemed so amused by something. I assumed it was work-related, some client story, some inside joke. Now I know the punchline was me. They were already in it, already lying, already touching under the table, already whispering in parking lots and turning off location settings. While I set the table, while I folded the napkins she used. And David. He let me sit beside her, my legs cramping from standing in the kitchen all day. And never once did he flinch. Never once did he reach for my hand like he used to. He let me serve the woman who was stealing my life while I smiled like a fool. I used to think betrayal came with fireworks, with lipstick on collars or text messages left open by mistake. But no. Sometimes it comes with a thank you note and a wine bottle that never made it into the trash. Rebecca hugged me that night, told me I was so generous. And I think that was the moment I disappeared. Not when David left, but when I let the woman he loved wipe her hands on the towel I'd embroidered with our initials. When the envelope arrived, I already knew it was from his lawyer. The paper was thick, unnecessarily so, like legal weight could somehow soften betrayal. I opened it with shaking fingers, expecting the usual: division of assets, signatures, timelines, cold, clinical. But nothing prepared me for the words printed in bold near the top. Amanda Clark, passive spouse, non-income contributor. Passive. I read it again, then again. Not partner, not co-founder, not the woman who skipped vacations to meet deadlines, not the one who balanced the books when he overspent, not the woman who built client trust over a decade of holiday calls and perfectly prepared reports, not the woman who smiled across conference tables while he took credit for the numbers I cleaned. No, passive. David called me passive. He forgot, or chose to forget, that for 8 years I was the reason his business didn't fall apart. I did the taxes, the invoices, the late-night reconciliations. I handled the clients when he was too angry, too arrogant, or too busy to return a call. I was his buffer, his polish, His damn life raft. He forgot the nights I stayed up fixing QuickBooks errors while he slept peacefully beside me. He forgot the Christmas Eve I spent writing payroll checks so his employees could wake up with money in their accounts. He forgot the way I restructured his vendor deals when the company was about to drown in late fees. But his lawyer didn't forget to call me non-contributing. It was strategic, of course. If I was passive, then the financial split didn't have to be even. If I didn't bring in income, then why should I be compensated for what he now claimed as his company? And that's when the shaking in my hands stopped. Because that was the moment I realized something they hadn't counted on. I kept records. All of them. I had email threads, payment logs, spreadsheets with my initials in the metadata. I had client testimonials that came to me directly. I had old contracts with my handwriting in the margins. I had backup drives, and backup drives for the backup drives. David had always assumed I'd never fight, because I didn't scream, didn't throw plates, didn't storm out. But I didn't have to raise my voice. I had documentation. And if he wanted to call me passive in public, I was going to show him what it looked like when a passive spouse decided she was done playing quiet. He underestimated me. That was his first legal mistake. It started with a click, just one. I wasn't even looking for anything. Not really. I just sat at David's old laptop, the one he used to call the backup, still left on the desk like an afterthought. It had always been slow, clunky. He never remembered to log out of things on it, and there it was. His email, still open, still signed in. The inbox full of folders, and one folder called simply R. At first, I told myself I wouldn't look, that it was beneath me, that I didn't want to know, but the moment I saw her initials, something in me snapped. I clicked. The first message was from 3 months before he left. Subject line, "Can't wait to wake up next to you." Body, booked the hotel in Lisbon. September 17th to 23rd. Use the travel card. She never checks. She. Me. There were hundreds of emails. Notes about dinner plans, shared playlists, links to apartments in countries I didn't even know they'd discussed. Portugal, Italy, Argentina. I scrolled past messages titled Our Timeline, The House on the Hill, Christmas Just Us. They'd been planning a future together while I was still folding his socks. He called her light, said I was habit. He joked about how I'd never figure it out, how I still thought we had spark. They made lists together. Shopping lists, holiday destinations, possible baby names for her niece's child, like they were already a family. I found one message where he said, "Amanda's too good. She'll never fight back." That's what makes this easier. I sat there, the cursor blinking, the screen glowing in the quiet. He didn't just betray me. He planned my erasure. He used my loyalty like a shield, counted on my silence, my predictability, my unwillingness to make a scene. He treated me like wallpaper. Always there, always soft, always unnoticed. The last email I read was dated just 1 day before he told me he was leaving. He wrote, "After this weekend, I'm yours. I promise. Amanda won't see it coming." And I didn't. Not until right now. Not until this chair, this screen, this moment. I closed the laptop slowly, like sealing a coffin. Because something had died. Not the marriage. That was already gone. No, what died was the part of me that ever doubted I had the right to be angry. He left those emails open like a trail of gasoline, and I'd just lit the match. The conference room smelled like polished wood and peppermint tea, the kind of place where people pretend they aren't dismantling lives. I wore navy, clean lines, no emotion, the kind of outfit that says, "I'm reasonable." I wasn't. Not today. David sat across from me, too relaxed. He adjusted his cufflinks like it was a job interview, the new kind, the freedom kind. And then there was his lawyer. Young, sharp, too well groomed for someone who didn't know how to hide contempt. He smiled the moment I walked in. Mrs. Clark, he said like he was greeting a waitress, thanks for coming. We'll make this as painless as possible. I didn't respond, just sat, hands clenched in my lap, palms damp, heart steady but slow, like it knew something was coming. They slid the documents across the table, yellow tabs, signatures highlighted, a final script for a play I hadn't auditioned for. The lawyer cleared his throat. This agreement is fair, considering the circumstances. Amanda receives the home, her car, and no claim on the business, which David solely built. In exchange, she waives any further financial interest. Simple. Clean. Simple. Clean. Like I was a spill to wipe off the floor. He tapped the pen. Most people don't want court drama. It's easier to sign and move on. David leaned forward then. His first contribution. Amanda. This doesn't have to be ugly. I looked down at the signature line. Amanda Lynn Clark. Same name I signed on his business license. The lease. The first loan, the school forms, the hospital waivers, the house deed, the birthday checks, the apology cards, the same name he was asking me to erase. Quietly. And then I looked at the lawyer, his smug, practiced ease. That smile. He'd smiled when he said I was passive. He smiled when he said I'd agree. He smiled like I'd already lost. So I picked up the pen. And I smiled back. Then I stood. I won't be signing today, I said calmly. The lawyer blinked. I'm sorry, what? I slid the folder back toward him. There are some items missing, like the 8 years of unpaid consulting, bookkeeping and client acquisition I handled for the business. I'll need a revised draft that reflects actual history, not just David's revisionist version. David's mouth opened and then closed. The lawyer started to say something else, but I cut him off. And next time, don't smile so much. You're not as good at hiding arrogance as you think. I turned and walked out. My hands were still shaking, but I walked tall. Because I didn't come to be erased. I came to be remembered. I didn't sleep the first night. Or the second. Or the third. I didn't eat either. Not really. Just tea. Maybe crackers. I couldn't feel hunger. Couldn't feel anything but the cold pressing into my body from the kitchen floor. I don't remember how I ended up down there the first time. I think I went to get water. Then I slid down the cabinet and stayed. The tile was hard, unkind, but it was real. And real was something. I brought down a blanket at some point, but I didn't use it. I just lay there, eyes open, staring at the oven clock. Those green digital numbers counting time I couldn't feel. Around midnight on the second night, I found the notebooks. They were buried in the back of the pantry, in a box labelled tax stuff. David never looked at tax stuff. He hated numbers. That was always me. I pulled the box to the floor, cross-legged, numb, and opened it like a casket. Inside, receipts, old invoices, notes in my handwriting, post-its with scribbled logins. And then, the red notebook. That red notebook had once been my brain. I kept everything in it. Notes from calls, passwords, account routing numbers, backup access codes, email trails I copied just in case. Years ago, when David said he was going digital, I still kept it. Because paper doesn't crash. Page after page. My handwriting, my structure, my foresight. On the third night, I found the page, David's cloud login. I stared at it for a long time. My name was still listed as secondary access. He'd never bothered to change it. He thought I wouldn't look. Thought I was grieving, too broken to remember how sharp I used to be. He forgot that pain sharpens more than it dulls. Next to it, in the blue notebook, was a column of account numbers. Bank, investments. A line that read, Panama, pending transfer, verify W's. Rebecca. Rebecca. Her name in my pen from some conversation I wrote down and didn't even realize mattered at the time. I laughed. Out loud. Alone. On the kitchen floor. because he thought he'd buried it all, thought his secrets were locked up, digital, encrypted, invisible, but he never understood the power of a woman who pays attention. I had his cloud, his numbers, his passwords. And now, I had time. 3 nights on the kitchen floor didn't break me. They prepared me. He made his plan in silence. Now it was my turn. I found her in a photograph. Wedged between old tax returns and a dried-out pen, she looked up at me like she'd been waiting. Hair wild from the wind. One eyebrow raised, lipstick slightly smudged. But she didn't care. I could tell. That girl never apologized for taking up space. She was 26, standing in front of a bookstore, holding a coffee like it was a promise. That was before David, before marriage, before I learned to measure my tone and ask permission with my eyes. I stared at her for a long time. I used to be her. Sharp heels, messy opinions, laugh too loud, cry too fast. I wrote poetry on receipts, drank red wine before interviews. I once walked out of a job because the manager told me to smile more. I smiled only when I meant it. And then came the softening, the polite nods, the I'm fines, the way I stepped to the side in group photos, the way I let David shine while I dimmed myself to make room. It wasn't his fault. Not entirely. I gave it away, bit by bit. Every time I let something go for the sake of peace. Every time I said, "You're right, honey." Every time I swallowed discomfort and called it compromise. And now I was 54, alone, betrayed, bruised in places no X-ray could see. But holding a picture of a woman who once said, "Don't you dare call me delicate." Where had she gone? Had I buried her beneath casseroles and PTA meetings? Folded her away in a linen closet behind monogrammed towels? Left her in the glove box between grocery lists and gum wrappers? Maybe. Or maybe she hadn't gone anywhere. Maybe she'd just been waiting, watching, letting me break, because she knew I wouldn't go back to her until I had nothing left but myself. I ran my thumb across the edge of the photo. She looked like someone I'd like to know. I stood up. For the first time in days, I didn't feel like I needed to apologize for taking a deep breath. I poured a glass of wine, red, and drank it without shame. I let the lipstick smudge. I put on the music I used to blast at midnight. I walked barefoot through the house and let my hips sway. That woman didn't vanish. She was just on hold. And now that David was gone and the polite version of me had been shattered, I had room to invite her back in. Not as a guest, as the one in charge. Step 1 was never about revenge. Not at first. It was about clarity. I needed to know what I was up against, the size of the storm, the depth of the betrayal. I needed facts, not feelings. And if there was one thing David taught me over the years, it was how to track a trail of numbers. He forgot that. He forgot that while he was shaking hands at meetings and sipping cocktails at networking events, I was the one logging receipts, reconciling vendor payments, updating spreadsheets. I was the one fixing the books when his math got sloppy. I was the one who knew which account funded which business trip. I even knew the passwords he thought I didn't. 10 years of handling his reports burned those patterns into my brain. So I started pulling threads. Bank statements, real estate records, company filings. I found 2 properties I didn't recognize, one in Asheville, one in San Diego. Neither in our name, both purchased through shell companies I helped him set up back when we thought we were building an empire together. I found the travel history, flights booked under initials, hotels paid in cash, the same destinations that popped up in those emails with Rebecca. I opened his social media, the one he thought I never looked at. He wasn't stupid enough to post anything himself. But his friends were. Tags, check-ins, "Great weekend, brother." Captions that betrayed more than he ever said out loud. I built a folder, digital and physical, color-coded, labeled, financials. Real estate, communications, timeline. I charted everything. When the lies started, when the money shifted, when the plans for a new life began to harden. It was all there, like puzzle pieces that had been scattered in the open, just waiting for someone to bother connecting them, and that someone was me. I didn't cry over the numbers, they were clean, objective. They didn't argue, they didn't gaslight, they didn't call me dramatic. They told me with terrifying precision exactly when he started erasing me. He thought I'd be too heartbroken to notice, too emotional to be methodical, too fragile to trace his footsteps. But David underestimated one thing. I know how to read between the lines. And I don't forget numbers. Not account numbers. Not dates. Not patterns. Not the moment I realized I knew more about his secrets than he knew about my strength. Step 1. Done. Information is power. And I was fully armed. Step 2 was leverage. Information is power, yes. But leverage is the pressure point. It's the moment where knowledge becomes control, where truth stops being a wound and starts becoming a weapon. And I found mine in a folder David forgot to shred. It was in the old filing cabinet in the garage, the one I hadn't opened in years. It smelled like dust and engine oil. I almost didn't check it, but something told me to pull the bottom drawer. Maybe intuition, maybe rage. Tucked behind expired warranties and faded receipts was a manila folder labelled DLC Holdings Backup. I almost missed it. It looked so ordinary. Inside, gold. There it was. A scanned agreement with a Panamanian holding firm. A shell company. I remembered helping him fill it out years ago, thinking it was for international expansion. He said it was strategic, said I didn't need to worry about the details. He smiled when he said that. He always smiled when he lied. But here was the truth. On paper. His name on the account. And mine. Not hers. Not Rebecca's. Mine. Amanda Lynn Clark. Joint signatory. 50%. Equal legal control. No expiration date. No revocation clause. He hadn't removed me. He'd forgotten I was ever there. It wasn't just an account, it was a pipeline, used for shifting funds, hiding tax liability, keeping money liquid, as he used to call it. It wasn't illegal, not quite. But it danced on the line, and if it ever came under scrutiny, David would be the one explaining it, not me. I sat there, the paper trembling in my hands, and realized this was it. This was what he didn't want anyone to see. Not his lawyer, not his partners. Certainly not Rebecca. I could already imagine the look on her face when she found out I had access to the thing that funded their little villa fantasies. He thought he could strip me of everything, the marriage, the business, the dignity. But he left the foundation intact, and I held the detonator. All I had to do was squeeze. Leverage isn't loud. It doesn't scream or demand. It waits. It smiles. It lets them believe they're still in control. Until the day they wake up and realize, you've had the matchbook all along. I didn't have to expose him. Not yet. Just knowing I could. That was enough. For now. I didn't scream. I didn't cry into voicemails. I didn't post cryptic quotes about betrayal or revenge. I didn't throw plates or show up at his office or send warning texts with ellipses and veiled threats. I went silent. David had always counted on my silence to mean submission. To him, my quiet was compliance. My calm meant forgiveness. He didn't understand that silence, real silence, is what comes right before the thunder. So I let him believe I was folding, that I was grieving, that I was passive, just like he labelled me. And while he played house with his mistress in whatever overpriced condo they'd picked out together, I assembled my weapon, piece by quiet piece. The folder started simple. Dates, signatures, emails, transfers. Then I added audio. He forgot about the voicemails. He never thought I'd saved them. Those sweet nothings he left when he was out networking. The ones that didn't line up with where he said he'd been. Then came the texts. Screenshots. Timestamps. Phone records. Every lie had a breadcrumb, and I followed them all. I organized it all like a war map. Not messy, not emotional, just fact. Line after line, fact after fact. I didn't send him anything. I didn't warn him. I simply waited. I watched his accounts. I saw money move. I saw a new LLC appear, one I hadn't heard about. I saw Rebecca tagged in a post from a dinner he claimed was a board meeting. But I said nothing. Silence. I stopped answering mutual friends. I let them guess. Let them assume I was heartbroken and broken down. They pitied me. Good. Pity made me invisible. And invisible made me dangerous. I didn't show my folder to my lawyer yet. I wanted it complete. I wanted it airtight. Because when I moved, I would not miss. And when I landed, there would be no apology. David once told me, early in our marriage, the calm ones always scare me the most. He laughed when he said it. I didn't. He thought my silence now meant surrender. But silence is strategy. Silence is strength sharpened to a whisper. Silence is a woman watching and choosing the exact second when the truth will be loudest. And I hadn't made a sound. Yet. It was a Thursday, the kind of day that smelled like dust and printer ink. His partner, Marcus Whitmore, had been with the firm almost as long as David. They built it together, golfed together, drank too much bourbon on holidays and toasted each other's marriages like they meant it. I asked him to meet me at a neutral cafe, one that didn't smell like shared history. I didn't want sentiment. I wanted leverage in a cup of chamomile tea. He arrived wearing that lawyer's smile, the one that says, "I'm listening, but only with one ear." "Amanda," he said, too bright. "I was surprised to hear from you." I placed the folder on the table. No small talk. No catch-up. He looked at it like it might bite. "Is this about the divorce?" he asked, already half defensive. "No," I said. "It's about the business." That caught his attention. He opened it, slowly, like he already knew it wasn't going to be good. His eyes scanned the pages. Transaction logs, emails with his initials on CC, timelines, Panama documentation, the shell companies, the messages about asset movement. Then came the voicemail transcripts, and finally the contract. My signature, his oversight. When he reached the end, his face had gone pale. Not embarrassed, not sorry, worried. He closed the folder, folded his hands, cleared his throat. "Amanda, we didn't know you had access to all this." I didn't blink. "But now you do," I said. "And now you have a choice." He said nothing. Just watched me, the way men watch a storm on the horizon, trying to calculate whether it'll pass or rip the roof off. "I'm not going to the press," I said. "Not yet. I'm not going to the board. Not yet." I leaned in slightly, soft enough to seem calm, sharp enough to draw blood. "But if I'm erased from this company, if I walk away with nothing, then I don't walk away silent." He swallowed. "I know things David hasn't told you, about where the money went, about what's been promised, about the risks your name is now attached to." He looked at the folder again, like it might explode. "And if I cooperate with federal review," I added, voice light, almost sweet. "You'll be answering a lot more than emails." Marcus exhaled slowly. "What do you want?" I smiled. "Not everything. Just what's mine. Clean, legal, immediate." He nodded once, slowly, carefully, like a man defusing a bomb. And just like that. The game shifted. I didn't need David to agree anymore. I had his partner's fear. That was enough. It came in an envelope. Again, always an envelope. This one had no ceremony, no meeting, no phone call. Just a standard termination letter with my name spelled correctly, but my title mysteriously absent. "No, thank you for your contributions. No, we're grateful for your years." Just one line in bold, bureaucratic clarity. Effective immediately, Amanda Lynn Clark is released from all duties and roles associated with Clark Whitmore and Associates. Released. like a balloon. Or an old dog. David signed it at the bottom. Not even a digital signature. Ink. He held a pen in his hand and wrote my name like it meant nothing. Like I was an assistant they outgrew. He said it was to simplify the transition. Said it was cleaner this way. He was trying to scrub me out of the story, even though the first 2 years of that company ran on my back and my hands and my sleepless nights. I named the damn thing. I created the client tracking system. I picked the fonts for the brochures. I stayed up redoing proposals while he got drunk celebrating imaginary wins. But now I was a clerical line to delete. The next day I made a call. One call. To a client I had brought in 3 years ago. A client who had stayed because I remembered birthdays, asked about their kids by name, built trust with details David never thought mattered. I said, "I'm no longer with the company." She said, "Then neither are we." By the end of the week, 3 more clients followed. Not because I asked. Because they knew who the heart of that company had been. David didn't call me. Of course not. He had too much pride. But Marcus did. He said, "You're bleeding us out." I said, "I'm just letting people decide who they trust." Truth is, I wasn't trying to destroy them. Not yet. I just wasn't going to protect them anymore. I had spent years building a reputation David used like wallpaper, something that made things look good while he handled the real business. But when he peeled me off, he forgot something. Wallpaper holds the room together. Strip it away, and you just see the cracks underneath. I didn't storm the gates. I didn't scream, sue, or sabotage. I just stepped out of the way and let the company collapse under the weight of what it never appreciated. Me. It was close to midnight when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. The number wasn't saved, but I knew it by heart. One of those numbers you memorize by accident over decades of love, routine, and shared calendars. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I picked up. There was a pause, breathing, and then, Amanda. His voice. Not smooth, not confident, not rehearsed, shaky. I didn't say anything. Let the silence stretch. I don't understand what you're doing, David said, each word cracking at the edge. You're being vicious. That made me laugh. A sharp, single sound. Vicious, I repeated. You're going after the business. You're turning clients. He stopped himself, recalibrated. You don't have to do this. You don't have to destroy everything. I closed my eyes and let the words hang in the air like smoke. David, I said quietly, I'm not destroying anything. You're not, he snapped. You've gutted my entire client list. You've scared Marcus half to death. You're threatening exposure. You're enjoying this. I didn't answer right away. I wanted him to feel the silence, really feel it. The way I'd felt his silence for years when I begged for conversation, for truth, for acknowledgement, and got air instead. Then I said, slowly, deliberately, I'm not destroying anything, David. I just stopped protecting you. He didn't respond. I'm not the one who opened secret accounts. I'm not the one who cheated. I'm not the one who buried money offshore. I'm not the one who signed the termination letter. Still, he said nothing. I spent years shielding you, I continued, cleaning up after you, smoothing things over. You never once thanked me. You just assumed I would keep doing it, forever. More silence, this time heavier. And then, quietly, like he was still trying to control the narrative, he said, "This isn't who you are." I smiled. You don't know who I am? Click. I ended the call before he could answer. I stared at the ceiling after that, lying in the dark. No tears, no adrenaline, just a stillness I hadn't felt in years. He called me vicious. But what I was done. And maybe that's the scariest version of a woman like me. Not angry, not screaming, not breaking dishes. Just finished. Because once I stopped holding his world together, it didn't take long for the whole thing to fall apart. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Bright sun outside, quiet in the house, the kind of day that almost feels innocent. I didn't recognize the number. Out of state. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something in me knew. I answered with a simple, hello. Silence. Then a voice, soft, trembling, like the first crack in glass before it shatters. Amanda, it's Rebecca. I didn't speak, not because I was angry. I just didn't owe her anything. She waited. Then, more urgently, please don't hang up. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he was like this. Her breath caught. A sob slipped out, barely muffled. He told me. He told me you were cold, controlling, that you didn't support his work, that you didn't love him anymore. Another sob. I believed him. I said nothing. I didn't know about the accounts, the offshore stuff, the other women, the meetings with the IRS. He said it was just a misunderstanding. There it was. She thought she was the exception. She thought she was the love story. She thought I was the villain in his version of events. I imagined her now, sitting on some kitchen floor, mascara smudged, surrounded by files she didn't understand, the cracks finally visible, and suddenly I saw the scene with complete clarity. It was never about me versus her. It was him. Always him. Rebecca sniffled. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm unraveling. She wanted comfort, a thread of forgiveness. A woman-to-woman moment of soft understanding, but I wasn't that woman anymore. I cleared my throat, calm as steel. I know what it feels like, I said. To realize the man you trusted lied to your face. To think you were building a future and find out you were just a placeholder. She gasped. Maybe at the words, maybe at the ice in my tone. And I'm sorry, I added, not for her, but for the version of me who would have tried to make her feel better. But that version died. I didn't wait for a reply, didn't ask how she was, didn't offer advice or closure or any kind of emotional out. I simply ended the call, not with cruelty, with clarity, because I didn't need explanations anymore, not from David, not from her, not from anyone. I finally understood everything I needed to know, and silence, this time, was not surrender. It was freedom. I found out by accident, through a neighbour's text. Is it true you're selling the house? I saw the listing go live this morning. At first I thought she was mistaken. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe someone copied our address by accident. But then I searched. And there it was. Our home. My home. Photos I didn't authorise. Descriptions I didn't write. Words like spacious, sunlit, move-in, ready. As if no one had ever cried on that kitchen floor. As if the woman who built every corner of that house no longer existed. And the agent? David's cousin. Of course. I read the listing 3 times, then pulled up the county records. And sure enough, he'd filed the paperwork. Tried to sell it as sole owner. Tried to erase me from brick and foundation. He really thought he could. He must have forgotten or maybe just assumed that I wouldn't notice. That I was still that silent woman in soft sweaters who made his coffee and trusted his words. He didn't know me anymore. He didn't know how fast I could move when pushed. By the end of the day, I had filed a motion with the court to halt the sale. Attached were ownership records, signed mortgage documents, tax filings, all with my name. Equal, legal, unmistakable. When his lawyer called, his voice was tight. You could have just talked to David. I laughed. I did, I said, for 27 years. That window is closed. The sale was blocked within 48 hours. No court battle, no hearing. Just a simple ruling. Amanda Lynn Clark retains 50% ownership. All actions require mutual consent. He hadn't asked. He hadn't even warned me. He just listed it. Like a couch. I imagined the moment he found out. The call from the realtor. The confusion. The rising panic. The realization that he'd miscalculated. Again. He thought I was playing defense. He thought he still controlled the field. But what David didn't understand, not then, not ever, is that the most dangerous kind of woman is the one who remembers everything, every paper, every password, every promise. He tried to sell the house out from under me. He didn't just fail. He gave me another win, on record, in court, undeniable. And I didn't gloat. I didn't text him. I didn't shout. I just stood in my kitchen the next morning, bare feet on the cold tile, made my coffee exactly how I like it, and smiled. Because this house, it remembers me. Thomas hadn't called much since the divorce began. He said he was busy. Work, grad school, life, all the usual phrases people use when they're uncomfortable and don't know where to stand. I didn't push. I figured he needed space to process. What I didn't know was that space was filling with assumptions. Then one Sunday afternoon he showed up unannounced. I opened the door to see my son, my only child, standing there with that tight expression he always wore when he was holding something back. "I need to talk," he said. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I once fed him peas he pretended to hate, where David read him bedtime stories with a glass of wine in hand, where we once painted science fair posters together until midnight. Now it was quiet. He looked me in the eye, so much like his father's, but softer. "Dad told me. A version of things. About you. About the business. About the marriage." I waited. "He said you'd given up a long time ago, that you resented him, that you didn't want the company to grow, that you were angry all the time." He paused. I didn't know what to believe. I nodded, steady, and reached for the folder. Not the full one, not the legal bomb, just enough, just the truth. I slid it across the table. He looked at me, hesitant. I nodded once. "Read it." He opened it slowly, the way people open something that might hurt. Inside, copies of emails, accounting logs, messages, voicemails, all carefully curated. Not to punish, but to reveal. He read in silence. 20 minutes. Then 30. I watched his face shift, the way his hands stilled, the way his shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in understanding. When he finally closed the folder, his voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I didn't want you to hate him," I said quietly. "And I didn't want you to pity me." He sat back, looked at me like he was seeing something he hadn't wanted to admit. "You held everything together," he whispered. "I tried." He nodded slowly. "I should have asked. I should have listened to both sides." I reached across the table and took his hand, the same one I once held crossing the street, steadying first steps. "You're here now." And he was. He didn't defend David. He didn't ask me to soften the story. He just stayed. And that, after everything, was more than enough. I picked the cafe carefully. Not one of our old spots. Not somewhere with shared memories or ghosts tucked between coffee cups and corner booths. This place was new, modern, neutral, cold enough to keep emotion out of the air. I arrived 10 minutes early and chose the seat that faced the door. I wanted to see him coming. David walked in 5 minutes late, looking the same, but smaller somehow, like someone had turned the volume down on his presence. The suit was perfect, the watch expensive, but the confidence had cracks. "Amanda," he said too casually, like we were meeting to talk about someone else's marriage. I didn't respond with small talk. I didn't ask how he was. Instead, I reached into my bag and placed the folder on the table. He glanced at it, then at me. "What's this?" "A copy," I said, "of the signed agreement." He hesitated, then opened it. His eyes scanned the page. His jaw tightened. The signature at the bottom wasn't his. It was Marcus's. A legally binding agreement, countersigned by the firm's legal advisor, granting me 50% ownership in Clark Whitmore and Associates. Effective immediately. He blinked. Once. Twice. The page wavered slightly in his hand. "You went around me," he said. "No, I said calmly. You removed me. I simply walked back in through the door you forgot to lock. He closed the folder but didn't push it away. How much did you threaten Marcus with? Nothing he didn't already know, I said. I showed him what you tried to bury. And I gave him a choice. David sat back in the chair, jaw clenched so tight I thought it might snap. I built that company. So did I replied. You just got louder credit. Silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Finally, he said, So what now? You want to be partners? I smiled. No, David. I don't want to be anything. I just want what's mine. His hands curled on the table. You won't get away with this. I already have. He stared at me like I was someone he didn't recognize. Maybe because I was. I stood up, took my copy of the folder, and left him sitting there, surrounded by the sound of clinking cups and conversations that didn't include him anymore. Outside, the air smelled like fresh rain and clean starts. I didn't look back, because I didn't need to see his face to know what it looked like when a man realized he'd lost to the woman he underestimated most. The first deposit cleared on a Tuesday. I stared at the number for a long time, not with greed or even pride, but disbelief. After everything, this was real. My name on the wire transfer, my percentage, my win. For a moment, I thought about the things people expect women to do with money after a divorce. Tropical trips, new wardrobes, revenge cars. And sure, I did buy myself a damn good coat. Cashmere, black, timeless. But that wasn't the point. The point was what I knew, what I'd lived, the calls I'd made that no one returned, the meetings where lawyers looked past me, eyes sliding toward David like I was just a placeholder. The bank accounts I couldn't access because they were his, the way the world seemed to assume that, as a wife, I had no real ownership of anything at all. I remembered what it felt like to be erased, and then blamed for vanishing. So I opened a fund. It started with a single name, the Second Wind Initiative. I filed the paperwork that same week, hired a financial advisor, reached out to 2 women I trusted, one from my old accounting circle, the other a paralegal I'd met during the divorce chaos. I told them what I wanted. Emergency legal support, transitional housing grants, small business seed money, but only for women who've been abandoned, left midlife with nothing. They both said the same thing. How fast can we start? By the end of the first month, we had 20 applicants. Women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, some with kids, some without, all with the same hollow-eyed look of someone who'd just been replaced and discarded. We helped every single one. By month 3, we had 100. They came from everywhere. Suburbs, cities, small towns, stories eerily similar. Husbands who left after decades, joint accounts emptied, homes sold without consent, new women in the picture before the marriage was even cold. But this time, these women weren't alone. We gave them lawyers. We gave them plans. We gave them back their voices. I didn't need to be the face of it. I didn't even put my name on the site. But every time I saw a success story, a woman regaining custody, starting a boutique, rebuilding a life, I felt something rise in my chest that no courtroom win had ever given me. It wasn't just about money. It was about power. Shared, redirected, reclaimed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly wealthy. I sat at my desk late that night. Not in bitterness, not even in rage, but in finality. The kind of quiet that only comes when everything that needed to be said has settled inside you like stone. I'd rehearsed the words in my head for weeks, but now that it was time, my fingers moved without hesitation. I opened a blank message. No subject line, just his name at the top, David Clark. I began slowly. You broke me. I let the words sit. Not to provoke, not to guilt, just to state the truth. You shattered the woman who spent 27 years building your world and trusting she had a place in it. You called me passive. You called me cold. You called me dead weight. But you forgot who I was. before I ever became your wife. My hands didn't tremble. You left. You lied. You laughed behind my back. You brought her into our home, the same home where I folded your shirts and memorized your favorite mug and spent sleepless nights calculating bills you never noticed. I paused, then typed slowly. And thank you. Not sarcasm. Not spite. Gratitude. Sharp as glass and clean as fire. Because if you hadn't destroyed me, I never would have rebuilt this version of myself. I wouldn't have remembered what it feels like to own my hours, to wake up with clarity instead of dread, to be feared and respected in the rooms that once ignored me. Then I added it, the part he'd care about. P.S. You have 48 hours to complete the transfer of the remaining 8% ownership stake. The signed agreement is in your inbox. If the paperwork is not filed by Thursday at 5 p.m., I will forward the evidence of financial misconduct and tax irregularities to the prosecutor's office. No further warnings. No extensions. I didn't threaten him. I didn't insult him. I just gave him a deadline and the door through which he could exit. Quietly. I reread the message once. Not to edit, just to feel it in my bones. Then I pressed send. And just like that, it was done. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't refresh the inbox. I turned off the lamp, poured a glass of wine, and sat by the window in silence. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, so was I. It was over. Not because he said so, because I did. What part of this story touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read them. If this story felt close to your heart, give it a like, subscribe if you want to be part of a space where real stories matter. Got a couple more minutes? Check out the next story. It's also about the things we rarely say out loud.